Hi guys, welcome to another episode of In Frame. My name is Indigo.
And I'm Bella.
And today we're going to talk about the movie Handmaiden. But before we start, we're going to put a little disclaimer that we're not professional psychologists. So we're just doing this for fun.
And also, if you're under 18, we don't suggest you to actually watch it. So you have to be over 18 to watch it.
Yes. Let's talk about the movie and what it's about first. So this movie talks about how this Korean con man gets a help from an orphan pickpocket, and they kind of devise a pretty elaborate plan to plot out and seduce a Japanese woman out of her inheritance. So that's like the gist of the movie, and this movie in itself gets divided into 3 different parts.
Yeah. So the first part is basically the whole storyline. But then on the second part, it's sort of showing the backstory of the other, this main character called Lady Hideko. Mm-hmm. And also the third part would be just like the final ending of the whole plot, which is pretty interesting. I mean, like, what do you think about the film?
That movie was something else. That movie was, for me, that movie was weird. It was like unlike anything that I've ever seen. That movie was long. And that movie is littered with plot twist after another. The second you think you know what's going on in that movie, you probably don't. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
you probably don't.
The film was super long. It was like 3 hours long, but again, I felt like it was an interesting film. Well, even though I had to like watch it for 3 times to actually get the whole storyline. Yeah. But overall, I felt like the director sort of gave a really good in-depth details. To be honest, when you watch the trailer, you can't really see what the whole story is, but you know that it's going to be a really weird film. Yeah. It's going to be a really bizarre film, but then, give
the movie a chance. It has a pretty good storyline in it. Yeah. That's what I can say.
Again, as I said about the in-depth characters, so that's why we want to focus on the 2 of the characters, which is the Lady Hideko, which is the princess.
We'll call her princess because I feel like it's easier to remember who is who.
Yeah, and then we're going to talk about her maid, which is called Suki, and then her Japanese name is Tamako. So we're just going to use one of the psychological theory, which is...
It's called identity status. This theory talked about how a crisis, which is like just something that happens in your life, it will serve as like a catalyst, prompting movement along a continuum. And through through 4 stages of identity statuses. What was interesting to me about this theory is that 1, it doesn't assume that everybody will pass through and experience all 4 of identity statuses, and at the same time, it's not any other theory where it's like you have to pass one stage to get to the other. It's more, sometimes you'll experience stage 1 and then you go through stage 3, and then you can probably go back to 2nd, and then you'll probably go to 4th. It also put emphasis on cultural differences that will play a huge part on the differences in maturity and how you would define what maturity is.
Yeah, and also like this theory doesn't really like only for like young people or anything. It's more of like for any ages. It's because it's a people continuously change their identity statuses, and you can just go from one status to another one in a span of 1 month or even a year or 10 years. So but this theory emphasizing on 2 aspects, which is the exploration part and the commitment, and from those 2 aspects they put 4 different identity statuses. So firstly is identity diffusion. So it has like low exploration and also commitment. So they haven't really considered, so this person who is in this status, they haven't considered their identity at all and haven't established any life goals. It's basically like a children, like most of the primary motivations are like hedonic. And so it's just avoiding discomfort. They just want comfort in life. And then the second one would be identity foreclosure, which is low exploration but have high commitment. And so basically their identity is being set by the belief that is in their environment. So it's not them that choose the identity, but the environment chose the identity for them. And then the third one would be identity moratorium, which is high expectations, explorations, but low commitment. The one that is really important on this moratorium status is the identity crisis. So basically, moratorium is an identity crisis sort of state where they explore and experiment with different values, beliefs, and goals. And the last one would be identity achievement, which has high exploration and commitment.
Yeah. We're probably gonna start delving into the characters. I'm gonna start talking about Lady Hideko, which is again the princess. So we're gonna start with her identity diffusion, and I think what's gonna be interesting in this discussion is Bella and I have very differing views on where the characters are at each stage. So for me, her identity diffusion kind of starts showing when the count, so that's the con man, usually, really, his name is Fujiwara. He plans on seducing her and steal her inheritance, but because he finds this to be impossible, he striked up a deal with her that she couldn't refuse, and that deal was if they get married, he'll save her from her uncle, which is pretty abusive, let's just say that, to say the least, in exchange for half her inheritance. And she agreed, but under the condition that when they marry, he'll give her a poison that will guarantee to kill her quickly in the event that she is caught by her uncle and taken back to the basement where he keeps her and where she was abused. So I feel like this particular stage of her life, I can say, was identity diffusion, right?
Yeah,
identity diffusion status, because the last part, especially where she specifically asked for the poison, that part is sort of that was when she heavily seeks out pleasure and avoid discomfort, and the discomfort is obviously her being abused by her uncle. And she sort of made sure that she have like a pretty strong guarantee that she doesn't get caught, and in the event that she does get caught, she is able to escape. But Bella, interestingly, has a very different view on where that is.
Well, to be honest, I don't really see any identity diffusion status on Lady Hideko, because I felt like when you mentioned about her cooperating with the con man, I don't feel like that's like they don't. She doesn't have any like exploration or commitment towards the identity, because I felt like just by accepting the offer, she is actually having an exploration on the possibilities that oh hey, I actually can get out of this situation, I can actually be free from this situation. And I felt like in that sense she's exploring other possibilities rather than I'll be stuck in here for the rest of my life,
Which is interesting, I think, because for me, when I hear the word exploring in this, it's like actual exploration, you know what I mean? You go out and do it, and not just exploring the ideas. So I feel like that was like an interesting,
because I felt like in terms of exploration, it doesn't have to be like you have to go out there going on an adventure, but it's more of like the way you think in terms of like ideologies and stuff like that, even ideologies in terms of like freedom, like that's something like I felt like that's an exploration in itself. So that's why I felt like that's the difference where the exploration comes from. You're more like the external factors of like exploration. Mine is like more of like internal sort of factors.
I can accept that, of course. We're different people, obviously. We're gonna differ in opinions.
Okay, identity foreclosure is low exploration but high commitment. So from what I see, before she was offered to cooperate with the Count, I felt like she was stuck with the idea, like with the environment that she is in, which is being mostly affected by her uncle. And in itself, it's there is no exploration into it, because like she doesn't know anything outside that world. But at the same time, she is committed to actually do whatever the uncle told her to do, just because it's based firstly on fear, and like she doesn't know anything outside of that field. So I felt like that's the foreclosure identity status for Lady Hideko.
Yeah, and I can accept. I don't know. Maybe because I didn't really see her highly at this highly committing into something, but at the same time not exploring anything.
Yeah.
Again, just differing in opinions,
Yeah.
which I think is really interesting. So the third one is called the moratorium stage, right? And I think for Lady Hideko specifically, this is when, and I think this goes for both characters as well.
Yeah.
This is during the first sex scene in the movie. You'll see it if you watch it. That entire scene for me is moratorium. So I'm just assuming that exploring their sexuality to that extent at that point would probably be frowned upon. So exploring it to that level would require a high level of exploration, which is what this identity stage is highly defined by. It represents a high degree of exploration and a low level of commitment. And by sort of coming over to like the other side and experiencing what that's like, but without committing into anything, that to me just screams out moratorium identity status stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're not. This shows me the fact that they're even exploring it.
Yeah.
It shows that they're not committed to a particular set of identity. Because I feel like if you are, you wouldn't explore something else. If you're sure of what you are, just in general in life, I feel like exploring is not. It's not really something that comes to your mind just like that.
Yeah.
Because you're comfortable with what you are, and then it would also eventually nudge in the direction of the fact that they're keeping their options open.
Yeah.
So that was. For me, that just screams out moratorium stage.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with like the sex scene is actually like it screams out moratorium identity status, but I want to extend on that, like the moratorium identity status for Lady Hideko, because I felt like she actually went through two different moratorium status like on that in that film. So before the sex scene, when she just started out cooperating with Count Fujiwara, that actually screams out moratorium because it's high exploration, but still, it's still kind of like not really low commitment, but then like she has more high exploration, but at the same time, when after the sex scene, it's sort of like high exploration towards Suki instead of the Count Fujiwara. So it's sort of like a different, it's the same moratorium status, but it's just a different motivation in terms of exploration. That's just what I think. It's just like an extension of your explanation, to be honest. Yeah.
And so that was the third stage, and we're gonna move on to the last stage for the princess. And this last identity stage is called identity achievement. And for me, this was when Hideko and Suki escaped their current life. They ended up getting together and just moving to Japan. Moving to Japan. And just the fact that they got together and moved to a different country shows a high degree of exploration and commitment at the same time. Because, well, at this point, it kind of shows that they've sort of, I don't want to say abandoned, but they've sort of shifted their values and goals into something else entirely. And at this point, these two characters have gone through a lot. A little spoiler alert, but Suki has gone thrown into asylum at this point. Hideko almost committed suicide one time. So the similarities that these two characters have for me is that they've always known what they didn't want out of life. So they always know what they didn't want out of life, and they always felt trapped. So through exploring their values, their beliefs, and goals, they have decided to commit to a different set of values together and escape the life that they didn't particularly enjoy.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. Like, I didn't really think about like they don't actually know what they want, but they actually know what they don't want.
And I think that's us. Like just in real life.
I mean, like it's also applied to our next character, which is Suki or Tamako. Mm-hmm. So in here, I only have like a Well, interestingly, we kind of like have different
Yeah.
views. I mean, obviously, this is also like we have different views.
Yeah.
For Suki or Tamako, which is the maid of Lady Hideko, well, at the beginning, I felt like she has a foreclosure identity status, where I think she told herself that like I want to make a big catch in outside of the Korea. I felt like in that sense she hasn't really explored, but she has a really high commitment towards, how, people in that area was like, I need to be rich, that sort of thing. And then, but not long after that, I felt like she sort of moved to moratorium identity status, where Lady Hideko apparently asked her, can you read this for me? It's a letter from Count Fujiwara. And she shamefully said, oh, I actually can't read. And I felt like at that point, she realized that like, oh, I actually haven't really explored much. And I felt like in this part, she sort of shifted to the more higher exploration, but no commitment yet. Like she still opens to a lot of other possibilities and that sort of thing. And then like I felt like after that she also like starts to learn how to read with Lady Hideko.
And I think this is where we differ. I don't know. I think this is my personal opinion. With a lot of these theories, it's also you kind of make sense of it. You kind of understand that theory by inserting yourself into a situation and sort of like imagining what it would be like for you. And for me, because I stuck with the definition of it being like high degree of exploration and like low degree of commitment, and you are in the middle of like an identity crisis, I feel like, I don't know, for me, again, this is me personally, I don't see anything that was big that was happening in her life sort of to prompt an identity crisis. And I think that's where you and I differ. I kind of have to have it like there's something big that happened in your life.
Because I felt like in terms of like identity crisis, like sometimes you just question yourself, like, who am I? What am I going to do in life? But then it doesn't have to have like you just went through a traumatic event. It's not necessarily that. It's just like But then so I felt like it's not necessarily a traumatic event. It's just like internally you're asking yourself like, okay, what do I want in life? Just like what you said. These characters don't know what they want in life, but they know what they don't want in life.
I think that was interesting that you mentioned about questioning yourself, because I think that's something that everyone goes through, especially during stages where it's like you just graduated uni and you don't know what to do.
Are you talking
next.
about me?
About We're in the same. I don't know what I'm doing, but at the same time, I kind of don't want to admit that I'm questioning myself or like having an identity crisis at the same time, because there's nothing big.
I mean, speaking of like the traumatic event, I felt like Suki actually sort of went through not a traumatic event, but more of like a very significant event, which is the sex scene, and then that's where it comes where she's kind of like confused with herself. So it's leaning towards like from moratorium to achievement, where she was confused as to where she is still committed to the plan with Count Fujiwara, or like, do I have to side with Lady Hideko? And like it's kind of like shown in the scene where she was looking at the window and like, oh, it's going so well, the plan is going so well. Count Fujiwara is like seducing Lady Hideko really well. But then like it's kind of like leaning towards achievement, in which not long after that, Lady Hideko tried to kill herself but then it got stopped by Suki, and she was like saying, I was wrong. And then like, I'm sorry, and then like it started, and then like the truth started to reveal itself, just like the past of the Lady Hideko, and then they started to make this grand move of like burning the books. And I felt like also there is a very symbolic scene where, well, I felt like you also mentioned about like Lady Hideko achievement status, where that scene as well, right?
Yes, during that part.
During that part. And then I felt like there's this symbolic scene where they open the door together, like when they try to escape. And I felt like in that moment, it sort of shows like they both achieved their identity achievement together.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's a very good, like, sort of like symbolism in terms of like, you know, the meaning of it. And also I think the last one that is, I felt like very important, is like she told her aunt, I mean like Suki told her aunt like I am not in a pressured relationship and I like women. She admitted, like she embraced the fact that she likes women, which is really good.
Yeah, because that means like she's sort of achieved, obviously, that identity achievement. She knows. Okay, so I feel like because Suki has already said this to her aunt, and like when you say something like this, there's sort of no going back. And clearly that shows that she's grown into herself, I guess you can say. And she knows what she wants. She knows, you know, she knows what she's looking after. And this sentence, although it doesn't seem like it, also shows that like she clearly has adopted or developed a new, different set of values and probably goals as well that differs from her previous one, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and also like looking at how she's very determined with it. It's just like high commitment all the way.
Definitely. This is high commitment and high exploration at the same time.
Yeah, but you know, like I felt like this is, even though the story is very complex and like very complicated in a way. Well, it's very not in a way. It's very complicated, but I felt like it's something that you could actually relate to our own life.
Yeah, and I think with this movie, one thing that you need to keep in mind while watching it is that there's a lot of symbolism, and one thing would happen and you didn't think that it would represent one thing, well, much like a symbolism would, obviously, but there's a lot of it that sort of gives you hints, and during the symbolism is actually when you sort of can relate it to yourself. I feel like.
And I felt like it's also very like sort of relatable, just because they explore about, you know, freedom, about sexuality.
With this theory in this movie, one thing that we also sort of need to hold on to is that people change all the time, and that's why this theory that falls along a continuum is that part, the fact that it falls into a continuum and it doesn't, you know, it's not set in stone, is sort of where it needs to be emphasized and highlighted. And I think that's just life in general, that's just part of life, part of finding out who you are. Part of like finding out who you are is always like a lifelong journey.
So I feel like if you feel confused about yourself or anything, it's something that is normal, that is okay, because we all go through that as well.
And this is not something I expected when I watched the movie.
I
didn't think it was gonna be like this, but you know, it's a pretty interesting movie. There's a lot that you can take out of it. Just give it a chance.
So give it a chance for the film, and I guess that's it.
That's it.
Okay, so if you guys like our video, just chuck a like on our down below here.
Tell us what you think of the movie. If you watched the movie, tell us what you think about the theory, and if you have any different opinions from us, we want to hear from you.
Or if you want other movies to be, you know, also covered. And also please subscribe for more of our videos.
And you might also want to turn on that notification button so you'll know when we post another video. So that's it from us today.
All right,
bye guys.